Welcome everybody to our panel today. My name is Paul Cantonis, and I'll be moderating the panel. I'm chairman of the International Academy of Web Television, and I'm also over at Digitas with the Third Act, which is the brand content group there. And so today's conversation is going to be about advertisers and content. Our goal today is really because we have a lot of time and we have a big panel of some serious muscle up here. So what we want to do is we're going to get into first making sure we're all on the same page of what advertising content is, what brand content actually is, why do advertisers get in the game, and then understand what does it all really mean and how are we executing on it now, what are the possibilities, how do we distribute it, how do we actually reach an audience, and hopefully these are things that some of you who are here in the audience as creators will be able to take back, internalize, and start thinking about how you think about your content and how you expect to work with advertisers. So that's going to be our goal for today. We have plenty of time, so we're going to be able to handle questions. I'll probably stop at a few points and see if anyone has any questions, and then we're going to try to kind of get through as much content as possible. So first I'd like to start off with everyone on the panel introducing themselves and giving you a good understanding of who they are and what they represent. And let's start here on my right with Avi Savar.
Hi, I'm Avi Savar. I'm the founder and chief creative officer at Big Fuel. Big Fuel is a social media and branded content agency. I personally have come out of the entertainment world before founding Big Fuel. I used to run series and specials at VH1 and kind of spent my whole life in the content creation side of the world. I recently was named president of the newly formed category of branded entertainment and branded content at Cannes, so I'm running the jury there for the first time, which I'm very excited about. So I've kind of spent my life creating content and figuring out how to tell stories, and most recently figuring out how to connect those stories with brands and commerce.
Hello, I'm Christian Busch with Alloy Digital, business development and some other stuff. We do two things. We produce content and we monetize content in the youth space. We're 12 to 34 focused, and in terms of this panel, we've been in the branded entertainment space for the last 4 years, I think. We've done about a dozen shows now, very large shows that get millions and millions of views, and we work with advertisers to integrate them into those shows. And looking forward to a fun conversation.
Megan Cunningham from Magnet Media, and we are a digital production studio and social media marketing firm. We produce original shows for technology companies and entertainment and media. So Associated Press and Google and NBC and a lot of companies that are succeeding really wildly on other platforms, but are really need assistance or specialization when it comes to social media and web video.
Great. Chris Young, CEO of Digital Broadcasting Group, DBG. Easiest way to understand DBG is we're kind of analogous to a offline television network like a CBS, Fox. Two ways advertisers work with us. They either align their TV spots against our programming that we have within a video player that we run on a bunch of different websites, or they will sponsor or product integrate into big shows that we do. And then lastly, if they don't like the programs that we've got on our slate, we custom create a show for them based on their brand objectives, and then we create a custom distribution plan where we distribute that across our channels of content. So that's effectively what we're doing. Started in 2007. We've got about 75 people, 5 different cities across the country. We're having a great time. And what I was just telling somebody earlier is it's really fun kind of making it up as we go along. We're all kind of making up the rules of how we do this, and which is really an exciting thing to do. So with that, over to you.
Having a great time doing it.
Yeah, you bet.
How you doing? I'm Mike Henry. I'm the CEO of Outringer Media. We're an online video sales and marketing company that has its roots representing a wide range of mostly producers, but also aggregators of high-quality online video. And we've worked with a lot of independent producers and a lot of folks that distribute their content on YouTube and other open platforms. About a year ago, we started developing a platform of our own called Open Slate Studios. And Open Slate Studios is meant to scale what we found to be a very interesting but challenging problem, which is finding the perfect match between productions that already exist, in our case, and advertisers that want to get into the independent online video space. So OpenSlate is meant to qualify and actually quantify the value of producers to specific brands with specific objectives. Can I ask a question?
Sure. Thank you. You're welcome.
I'm just wondering, in the crowd that we've got here today, how many of you guys are producers of video content? Wow. So that's it. Mostly it's about 2/3. Anybody from an ad agency here, or an advertiser? Got it. We'll direct the revenue-focused questions to you in the back.
Come on up.
Out of curiosity, anybody from a measurement company?
First one in, last one in.
Have any? Okay, cool. Look forward to talking to you.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Budkowski. I run sales and partnerships for Break Media. We are the leading company in the young male space. We own 9 different websites. The flagship site is break.com, rooted in the video category. We also run a video ad network, and we acquired HBO's in-house digital lab a few years ago to bring the opportunity to produce original and branded content for advertisers. So we run sites, create, distribute, and syndicate content for brands.
I'm Carter Mason, founder of JTS.TV, Just the Story, and nobody actually knows what we do yet because we haven't announced it yet. That's tomorrow at 12:30. Sign up at JTS.TV for information.
Come on, don't we get the preview?
Yeah, actually, we've labeled ourselves a premium independent television network, and the thrust of our network is making a sustainable model for TV quality programming that's distributed over the internet. Interestingly enough, it evolved. I haven't shared this with a lot of people, even the people that are, that were in the know, some of our shows that are on our slate, that the concept for our network actually evolved from me pitching slates of shows to sponsors. And thinking about the community and working together and how shows can work together. And so although our tagline is no ads, just the story, and it's a funny evolution, but it's, I'm looking forward to hearing this conversation and sharing a little bit about how I think brands can work with content without over-labeling themselves.
Excellent. All right, so you can see from our panel we have a group that represents advertising and content from different angles. But I want to start off, with understanding why are advertisers so interested in content. We know why content creators are interested in advertising because it helps monetize their content. We can get a little bit into how they can work with advertisers at some point. But why are advertisers so interested in content?
I would probably start by saying, I think if you look at, take Procter & Gamble, 50 years ago, they created a couple of TV spots, few magazine ads and called it a day. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but it was a much different landscape. It was much easier to find your consumer and deliver them a message. Now, in 2012, we've got kind of an empowered consumer that's really difficult to find, and, when you do find them, you sure as hell better engage with them. So what they're beginning to understand with this empowered consumer is that they resonate a hell of a lot more to kind of what we call utilitainment, which is the notion of providing a brand utility while entertaining at the same time. So, why advertisers are interested in content and branded entertainment, what we're doing is effectively, helping to break through the clutter and make a connection to this empowered consumer that is extremely fickle and can turn brands on and off like that. So I think that's a big part of the attraction.
Now, Christian, there's no whispering on the panel, dude. So you're going to have to tell everybody what you were whispering about. That was a good point.
Wondering if utilitainment was. I loved it.
I know. I stole that from my business partner, Joseph.
Okay.
Oh, excellent.
I love it, though. Everybody
that's weird
seems to
thing.
dig that word.
Okay, so you're talking about being able to reach consumers. Christian, with you guys at Alloy, how do you think about what the advertisers are looking for in content? Because you are representing content and you're going to try to go get the advertiser. You might be talking to Avi at Big Fuel and saying, come on, you've got these brands. Let's get them involved. Why? Why do you think they want to be involved?
So I think the brands are increasingly, ultimately it's about cutting through the clutter. There's so much going on, there's so many messages out there, and in our space the banner ad is dead. Long live in banner video, but the banner ad is dead. People zone out, they don't really pay attention. So the advertisers want to do things that are where they get the viewer to engage with their content. And let's not forget, P&G invented the soap opera I think in the 50s. So ultimately we're going back to what they were doing at the time. And the big trends right now in terms of what people want, they still believe celebrities, and whenever you put a celebrity in front of them, they will listen or look at a product, and they like watching entertaining content, and video is a great format for brands to in a well-integrated fashion to engage with consumers.
I'll take I think you guys are spot on coming from, and I agree that brands are looking for new ways to engage consumers. The problem, or the flip side of that, is brands are not in the business of engaging consumers. Brands are in the business of selling product. So if a brand didn't have to do these things that we're talking about, they wouldn't. If all they could do is run that 30-second commercial to sell their bar of soap, they would. The reality of the matter is that because the audiences have gotten so fragmented, and it's so hard to reach scalable audiences, I believe that the value of content for a brand is to cultivate and nurture their own audiences. Meaning, by developing branded content that now for the first time has the ability to live on and get syndicated through owned and earned media channels, meaning that I as a brand can effectively become a publisher, leverage the wonderful talent on the panel and the audiences that exist to distribute my content, to get it seen across different networks and platforms, but also start to develop my own audiences. It's in some respects the evolution of CRM, meaning that I can leverage content to engage consumers, to bring them into my portfolio or into my own channels. More Facebook fans and likes, more Twitter followers, more YouTube subscribers. And as a result, I start to create a pipeline of a conversation that hopefully is ongoing that I can continue to engage with. But at the end of the day, as a brand, I want to sell the bar of soap. So how do I create content that can resonate and become utilitainment, right? But at the end of the day, create a connection to the consumer so that I have now earned the right to talk about my soap. Because again, I think any brand that you talk to loves to ultimately experiment and engage in new mediums and new formats. But the way they get measured and the way they keep their jobs and get promoted is by selling product. So I think the balancing act is between how you create and develop engaging content, but connecting that to commerce is the biggest challenge that everybody on this panel faces.
All right, so you brought up a couple of things, and Andrew's itching to respond to one of them. I'm not sure which one. Whatever one you respond to, I'll give the rest to everyone else.
I was just going to say that traditionally brands have been forced to align with an environment. It's always been, hey, here's what we're putting out there to audiences. Do you want to be in that show or in that magazine? And it's about the environment and it's about the audiences that they're reaching. And now the brands have an opportunity to create the environment that will get the message across that they want to. They sit in conference rooms and do brand briefs and creative briefs about the exact environment that they want their brand to be associated with. And traditionally they've had to go out and look for that environment. Now they can create it themselves. That's incredibly valuable. And that's why we're seeing the flow toward the creation of content.
So would you call that brand content? That's how we're going to define brand content? Is that content that the brand is originating and creating?
Or aligning with them.
Yeah, I would say it's both, right? They want to create it, but they also want to align with it. I mean, we can get out into the marketplace and talk with a brand and literally start with a blank slate and say, where do you want to start and where do you want to finish? And let's work together to get there. It's brand content, but it's entertainment. It has to be entertainment.
Right. Is it one or the other? Do you have to, Megan, does a brand have to create content and or co-create, or can they just co-create by working or aligning with another show?
I think that the options are, as the rest of the panelists outlined in terms of paid, owned, earned, the ideal scenario is to have a combination and portfolio approach. I just want to step back just a minute to say that I think that the premise of your question, I would question, actually, because I'm not sure that there are the large majority of brands that actually believe that they should be creating
Very
content
true.
or really want to create content. I think that precisely, if they could
They're trying to
create
sell soap.
simple media plans that could still reach people in an engaging way on billboards or through print advertising or through television commercials that the whole, all of America is not fast forwarding, I think they would continue to do that. I think
Right.
if people were clicking on display ads, I think they would continue to serve up banners. I think
Absolutely.
that is a much easier.
If they can continue to disrupt rather than engage, I believe that they would.
Yes.
The problem is they can no longer do that.
Right,
So they have
precisely.
to go after new and innovative ways to do it.
I think you are. We're drinking our own Kool-Aid a little bit, which is cool. But cheers to that. But we are still talking. The branded video space is still a tiny portion of the media space, and it's a tiny portion of the online media space. So we're talking about a market that's maybe $500 million this year, whereas the online media space is $25 billion or so. So
But I would personally, I would call branded.
Make sure you're on the microphone. so
I
they
would
can
call
hear you.
branded. I would say branded content, from our perspective, is broader than just video. Branded content includes mobile applications, gaming. It includes, to me, branded content is as small as a 140-character tweet to a poke to all the way through a web video series, short form or long form. So there's a number of different ways to engage with audiences as a brand. Video is one subset. I agree, it's probably the most controllable format, and I think as a result, it's the format that brands are most comfortable aligning to and with, because it's measurable, controllable, shareable, etc. But there's a lot more to it than just video.
Carter, what do you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, backtracking a little bit to the aligning question, with a lot of producers in the room, I'm sure that's, big on their minds. I think brands aligning with brands, with web series or other new media creators need to think of their own material as a brand and give brands a reason to be identified with that brand and show the benefits of it. The sponsorship or branded material is fundamentally different from the disruptive base model of advertising. And so if content creators can give brands a reason that shows them to sell that, how they can sell that soap because they're aligned with your brand, then they have a positive reason to align with you as a producer and to get on board with your content and hopefully not even change your content. If you can show them how your material is valuable to them as is, you'll be able to maybe find funding or get that support to get your vision out and to make it where you couldn't have maybe done it before with, my God, there's a show on our network that had 360,000 views and made $260. I mean,
I think
what are you
that's
going to do?
I have a hard time hearing you sitting this close to you, but did you say proving to them that your content is valuable as is?
I
agree with that, because I think all really good points, but I think a big part of what's going on in online video, both just in standard video advertising and also with content, is that every marketer and every creative ad agency wants to make TV. They want to be TV producers, right? And a great creative director at a creative agency, that's okay. But a lot of brands feel that they deserve to be creative directors as well, and there's some risk in that, right? And this branded entertainment, this knee-jerk move to branded entertainment as opposed to fantastic content that gets sponsored, that stands on its own and can carry your message in a unique way, is probably a better place to start. Whenever we're in a conversation with a brand and we trip into the idea of product placement, it's a slippery slope from there. It gets ugly fast, because it's very seldom that a product placement is appropriate to tell the best possible story you can tell, in my opinion. And the harder you search for that alignment, the further you get away from what is true to your consumer, whether they exist already or they're an audience that you're trying to build.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think you've made a very important distinction, that you've got original content, what we call DBG originals, which are things that we do regardless of a brand. Like last year we did something called The Confession, Kiefer Sutherland, big web series, and we brought in Audi, and a brand just naturally said, I'll do that. But they had no creative control over it. Then there's this kind of branded entertainment where we say, oh, you don't like one of our original programs? No problem, we'll create a show for you. And it'll do this, and it'll do that. And you're right, everybody's kind of new to it, and they end up beating the user over the head with the brand. So then you get this kind of weird thing that the consumers see right through.
Right.
I think in terms of the naming, what you're saying is I use the term advertorial for part of this category, because whenever you put together, you hire a couple of people, you bring in talent, and you produce a spot that is centered on a product. Say it's a phone, right? You do a Samsung campaign or something, but it's really about the phone. I would call that an advertorial, and you can be good at getting that distributed, and it can be very successful if the message is right and it's on message. The stuff that I think is a lot more interesting is where you actually get a brand woven into a show, and in a good way. So we did, the best example we have of this from our campaigns is Kmart, where we've done 2 years of a show called First Day now, and the products are all over the show because it's clothing, it's bedding, it's accessories, it's all the stuff that Kmart sells, but there's no Kmart store, there's no Kmart episode, there's no Kmart waving around of labels, but the products are neatly integrated and work.
So is there value in that? I mean,
absolutely.
There's zero brand acknowledgement, right? It's just sheets and clothes. The conversation starts. Oh, they get some acknowledgement at some point.
They get a title card.
Right, so they get a title card. I mean, if I'm a brand, why wouldn't I want to create my own content that I can be around? I mean, the cost is so low out of pocket, relatively speaking. I mean, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars to produce 3 30-second commercials over the course of 1 year. I mean, you can spend 1/10 of that and get a good piece of quality video content that speaks to your audience in exactly the way you want to do it. Why wouldn't you do it? I mean, you say a lot of brands one second. You say a lot of brands aren't doing it yet, but a lot are, and the out-of-pocket is so low that it's just a really steep ramp.
And I didn't mean to say that a lot of brands aren't doing it yet, because I think all of our companies are probably reflecting the marketplace, which is just on this incredible hockey stick growth. But I think that what we're witnessing, at least, is if there was an option to stay at the status quo, I think they would have. And the reason, to answer your original question of why brands are interested in content, is because audiences are interested in content. And so a lot of the issues that you're bringing up is, really about how do you treat and respect that audience and do it in a real way that's integrated into the storytelling values that we all know and love. And coming from traditional media, I think losing that is just heartbreaking. You know?
I couldn't agree more. And let's be honest. Not all brands are created equally when it comes to content. Some brands are easier to work with. Some, it's harder to sell soap than it is to sell lifestyle. Okay, so when you're talking about car companies or brands like Nike, Red Bull, they're predisposed to content. So it becomes a unique balancing act. And then the less lifestyle of a brand that you work with, meaning the more you start leaning towards consumer packaged goods, the more those brand managers who ultimately control the budgets and control the voice of the brand, the more they live and breathe by, what I call a continuum that lives on show me, sell me. Right? It's unique selling proposition, it's features, it's benefits, it's things that align to consumer wants and needs rather than audience desire and passion, which live on a continuum that's more about help me, entertain me. And so and as a TV producer, I was always taught never, ever, ever underestimate your audience, right? Always, believe that your audience knows more than you do and create content that resonates. And the problem that brands often come to is they do underestimate their audience because they're selling and they're selling hard. So it's a balance between how do you integrate what the show me, sell me part of the equation is into the content, because usually what happens is the unique selling proposition is the core communication point for a brand. They build a communication plan around my toothpaste has the most fluoride in the marketplace. So therefore my toothpaste is better than yours. So every ad, every commercial, every banner ad says the same thing. But when you're creating content, you can't start from that point. That's a differentiation point in the marketplace as a brand for a product. When you're talking about content, it's about passion. It's about kind of micro segments of whether it's you want to talk to moms, what is it that moms are interested in? They're the buyer of the toothpaste, but when they wake up, I call it the 6 a.m. test. When they wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, no mom in their right mind is going, shit, I wish today was the day that I found toothpaste that had 20% more fluoride, right? They're thinking, I gotta get my kids off to school, I gotta make sure that this is done and that's done. And so our job is to create content that starts with help me, entertain me, and connects to show me, sell me, versus the other way around.
Okay, now-
and that's challenging.
So on that note, and talking about the brands originating content, because they have this choice, right? They can work with a show they've never heard of online, in most cases, right? Even though we know 50 to 75% of all the digital dollars right now are going against TV that's moving online. So we're talking about a small portion of the dollars that's going to this newer independent content, or to ad networks, or to running pre-rolls against content that's out there. So a brand decides they're going to make content, okay? Aren't they up against this wall of, well, they have no audience? How are they going to get an audience? And isn't the distribution that's available to them fake? Isn't it, are they really going to get an engaged audience if they make something brand new and then try to distribute it? What's changed out there, and how are brands perceiving this change in the marketplace?
I think that's about packaging. Personally, I think the way that content gets packaged today is a little different. Back in the day, or if today in mainstream entertainment, it's about finding the right actor, the right producer, the right script, screenwriter, putting it all together and selling it in as a package. In online content, predominantly web video, that's not with Kiefer Sutherland, because I think that's a different level of, I'd call that more premium content. Packaging the right influencer with the right publishing partner in the right context of audience allows you to instantly gain credibility and instantly gain an influencer distribution base. Meaning, we've done programs with, say, taking a College Humor plus a hugely powerful Twitter influencer and putting that together to create some uniquely co-created piece of content that tells the brand story. But at the same time, right out of the gate, we know without $1 of paid media, we know exactly how many views that piece of video is going to get, because we know that influencer has 1.4 million fans, and College Humor, right out of the gate, every video they release gets X amount of views, and so that package allows us to predetermine distribution viability.
I think you're
Minus paid media.
I think you're
Which is always a piece of it.
you're going to the right place in terms of the second big piece that needs to be taken into account when a brand starts producing content, which is distribution. And to your point, it's often cheap to produce, or relatively cheap to produce the content. If you don't put money into distribution, you're not going to get it seen. And unless you have the Evian babies, which happens once a year or twice a year, you have a couple of breakout hits every year. And whether you use an agency to seed it, or influencers, or whether you use traditional paid media, you need to put money into the distribution, because otherwise you're not going to get your stuff seen.
Absolutely. There's so much stuff out there because of that lower bar of entry that, it's like you could watch all day, you could watch content, and most of it's so bad. And that's where it's true, that's where there's been a problem with, especially with, web television. The bar is so low in so many cases that there's so much crap out there. And if you don't have those distribution channels, if you don't have that influencer, there's no real way, because people aren't out there searching. And that's really the challenge for show producers to get their shows, whether it's associated with a brand or not, into the mainstream and out of the independent television community itself, is finding a way to show that there is quality content out there. Now, when a brand does it, they put their money behind it, it can be quality, even though it's a lower cost than the costs have dropped. But without those distribution methods, and without the an influencer, it's almost impossible to rise up, no matter how good. I know we've got shows that we'll announce tomorrow that are freaking amazing and have less than 10,000 views, and I show it to people and they're like, "How have I not heard of this?" And I'm like,
Right.
Because there's so much damn content.
"Yeah."
Well, Chris, talk to me about what you guys do when you have a slate of content going out there.
Well, with us, not only are we producing web content, we're also distributing web content. So we've got a ton of different sites where we will run our shows. So I'll call up a site like Alloy and say, "Hey, I need 100,000 views of episode 1 of this show. Do you have can you get the views in your player?"
All right,
And they'll
Chris,
say,
pull back the veil. How does that work? Seriously, how do you get we know everyone has this impression that is all bullshit views. That's the impression, but it's not. The reality is we are getting engaged views by doing that. How?
It's integrated into the editorial. That's what you're hoping to do. When you pick a website that you want to place the content on, the understanding is that the people that are going there are going to want to see that kind of content, and the editorial is the place for that to be seen.
Yeah, so to continue this example, we did a show that was sponsored by Kimberly Clark. We integrated them. It was called Green Done Right. And we called up, Good Housekeeping, Red Book Magazine, whole bunch of Hearst properties.
Right.
They took it, they placed it within their existing
Why did they
video
take
player.
it? Why were
Because
they
we paid them?
Great, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
let's get to
it was paid
Right.
media. We paid for placement, and it was a featured thumbnail brought to you by Kimberly Clark. Interesting thing happened after the 12-week run of it, the campaign where we paid for views, a certain amount of views. The editor-in-chief of Hearst said to the advertising guy, hey, do you mind asking those guys at DBG if they mind us keeping their 10 episodes up? The commenting has been great. So that's one way that we distribute. The other way we distribute is we have our own player. We're not always just relying on other people's
Right.
player. We've got our player installed on 400 different websites. We've got channels. We've got DBG Men's, DBG Technology, where we'll place our player, and we totally control that environment. So there are very effective ways to do it. Then we'll partner up. We have a social strategy for all our programs where we're leveraging our talent. With Kiefer, we created a Twitter account for him. He now has a ton of followers. He did his tweets. Where we work with the talent to create community for the show. And vice versa, we'll work with the brands and their social graph to create community for the show. So there's tons of stuff we're doing. But I would argue that the reason why branded entertainment is not bigger right now, because to Christian's original point, this is nothing new. We've all ripped off the television model. They've been doing this since the soap opera. So they're totally hip to it, but the reason they haven't really gone hardcore into it is there isn't enough reach. The reach we can offer them is a joke. They can swat it, compared to what they do and the time in which they can get that reach on television.
Reach, Andrew, is that one of your
Maureen, you were
challenges?
going to say something. Go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just wanted to say that I think that we've all solved this problem differently, in terms of our business models and what solutions we're providing to brands. But I think that as far as, the generalized issue for the content creators in the room, it's very, very challenging to get to a point of scale where, when you're producing an original show, selling ads against it makes sense monetarily. And so I think that in order to achieve that business model on a sustainable basis, a lot of companies have defaulted to serving up web video in ad spots, and what Paul is referring to is the BS views. That's really, I think, been a backlash that a lot of serious advertisers have said this isn't legitimate. Now, there are legitimate ways of paying for content, paying for views, and achieving editorial, where the place in which the viewer is consuming the content is genuinely, they're seeking that story, they're seeking that message, they want to watch that video. They haven't been disrupted through a video banner that's auto-playing the minute you load the site. And so I think that, from Magnet Media's standpoint, we solved it similar to the way in which a lot of the others in the panel have attacked this. We serve, a lot of the big brands on a services level, and we produce original videos for them on their site, and then they can handle the distribution, or we serve an original content plan up against a number of partners, and collectively they have the reach of AOL and Yahoo. So I think, but that's all served up in the editorial well. So I think we call it in well, and I think that that's definitely something where if the people who are opting in to hosting your content are genuinely interested in your video, genuinely interested in your story, whether it's through a methodology that's identifying influencers or through bloggers who have become a fan of the show ahead of time before it was launched, and wanted to be part of that launch, it's the genuine, that authenticity that I think makes the difference between whether or not a view is considered legitimate and the viewers themselves are going to play through to the end, or whether they're just closing the window because they're annoyed.
I think the Chris touched on a point, and you're sort of expanding on the point. There's two big things that are out there that we have to differentiate. One is a view is not a view. there are views that are in banner video and they have a role. I'm a big fan of those as part of the media plan. There are click-to-play views where a user clicks on something in an editorial placement or on YouTube or something like that. And those are expensive because it's not easy to get a user to click on a piece of
Christian,
content.
what do you mean by expensive? How expensive is expensive?
Well, a very good quality view can cost 25 to 50 cents, if not more, yeah. And if it's targeted, maybe $1. So there is a price to getting these quality views. Now the TV advertisers, or all the mainstream, the big advertisers are saying, well, we should be paying a CPM that's comparable to TV. TV is a passive medium. There's a TV running, and right now the second probably in 200 million American households. And that doesn't mean someone's actually watching it, but people want to pay for it the way they want to pay for an engaged view. So there's and ultimately it goes back to scale. If I use this example all the time, if P&G called up any of the people on the panel right now and said, I want to spend $10 million on pre-roll in the next 2 weeks, and I need it delivered against women 25 to 54. Would anyone be able to deliver that? I think collectively we probably would have a hard time doing that.
I could take a couple million.
Yeah.
Like I think so my ADD is starting to kick in because I'm like racing on lots of different thoughts. But I think I want to touch on the issue of scale for a second. But before I do that, I also want to talk about kind of the adverse effect that the content can have if it's not created properly. I think, in trying to reach the right audience, if people are viewing content or content is being pushed down their throats and it's the wrong content, it may actually backfire on the brand, meaning they might actually walk away from a piece of content and go, you know what, I didn't really want to watch that, and that brand is trying to sell me something in a cloaked kind of a content thing. But if done right, okay, I think it's important on the issue of scale, because you're right, you're not going to get the kind of scale that brands are used to. But by embracing fragmentation, you can kind of pull apart scale and put it back together. Meaning, if you create, hypothetically, a web series of 10 episodes of a piece of content, you have to think strategically about what you're creating. So meaning, typically, it's a writer's game. The writer writes the content based on what story they want to tell. That's not good enough anymore in the world of web video, I believe, because you have to understand on an episode-by-episode basis the audiences you're trying to reach. So if I am trying to sell soap or whatever product I'm trying to sell, there are individual audiences that make up my collective group. Moms is an unbelievably large segment. There are eco moms, there are tech moms, there are single moms. I can talk for hours about the different demographics inside of one group. So how do you take a 10-episode web series, and each episode should identify and talk to a specific subset of your overall segment, and then what you do is each individual video might be able to give you 1 million, 2 million views on a segment-by-segment basis. Then you put it all together. Now I've reached potentially 20 million moms across the board. But by being very specific and targeted within my content, packaging it the right way, I can take apart scale by embracing fragmentation and then putting it back together to ultimately deliver scale. And then leveraging the right partners to do it. So yes, Hearst might be an unbelievable example for a premium level of content, and you gotta pay them to do that. But I could also identify 25 to 30 mid-level blogs who I probably don't really have to pay, who would die to have my content because they're dying for content themselves. So I could pay them a fraction, but take it apart and put it back together. Those 35 sites collectively might give me more scale than Hearst can as an individual. And as part of that plan, as a distribution plan, you're taking kind of some media planning methodologies and applying it to content creation. And I think that's something that we often forget because we're creatives and we sit in a room and we go, what story do we want to tell versus what audience do we want to reach, how do we want to talk to them, and how is this individual episode going to reach that audience, and how is this next episode going to reach another audience?
I would challenge you to just address that. That's cool, and you're right, but if there's no exchange of money, you can't guarantee it, and it's very precarious to sign an insertion order for an advertiser and say, I'm going to give you this amount of views if you're posting and praying on a blog network, which we do, but we always way underestimate it, haircut it.
So
Money has to change hands.
Hold on, before you dig into that, Andrew, you are on the front lines on this. You and your team at Break are having to deal with the agencies that are navigating the brands to understand all this. I mean, how do you help the brand make sense of this world? I mean, you know, yes, we're talking about insertion orders now. We're getting really deep into the media buying, but how do you help them? What happens in the process to get a brand to understand how they play in this world? I mean, we're having trouble following this because there's all these permutations. What is it going to take for a brand to get it and jump in?
It's a trust is really where it starts. The brand has to trust the player that they're working with first and foremost, and that takes time. You know, what I like to do is be looked at as a resource to help them navigate the space. I met with an agency last week that has a very Fortune 500 company that's buying video on large scale every quarter, and I went through their terms and conditions of what they send the networks that are participating in the submission, and I pointed out things that are enabling networks to run the video outside of where they think it is. Just because the terms and conditions, they don't outline it properly. So I said to her, I can run every single one of these videos in banner autoplay, and you would never know it, and that's why I can bid that low on a CPM. The tough thing is that what I'm trying to do is create value, and that's what the differentiation is out there. Right now, in television, there's ABC, CBS, you're paying for the Super Bowl. That's why it's $3.5 million for 30 seconds, because there's a bazillion people watching it. It gets what it gets. And then when you buy the military channel, or you buy a fifth-tier cable network that's in 15 million homes, you get what you get. You get what you pay for. And that's the same thing that clients have to turn the switch in their heads. You know, just because you created an awesome piece of content doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. And the line I say is, content is king, distribution is king-er.
But now, Mike, wait a minute. So we get that there's this element of trust, and that's going to be part of the sale to the brand to make original stuff, but also in what shows they want to co-create with or align themselves with. What's missing in the marketplace to help an advertiser feel comfortable with ongoing content and buy it, right? Because a little show, it might be, oh, advertiser, you only have to give me $5,000 and I'll make some cool videos for you. That's, an advertiser can't spend $5,000 when they have a $50 million budget. So Mike, what do you feel, or what do you think is missing out there from this equation?
Distribution is huge, you know, and I agree with Chris. The biggest challenge is that what we can provide right now is a SWAT. You know, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what you can get on TV. And I think that's partly a matter of time, but it's changing quickly, you know, and we've got strategies and tactics to address that, but it is what it is. And I think one of the interesting things that I heard bouncing around here was talk of, I guess, quality. You know, I'm interested, I guess, Carter mentioned there's a bunch of crap out there. There's certainly a bunch out there, a lot of stuff out there. But I think one of the bigger challenges is understanding what, you know, is good for a brand in any particular circumstance. You know, it's what we think about a lot, obviously. So, but I guess, you know, what makes something crap is another way of thinking about it. If Kiefer Sutherland ostensibly makes something good, we'll back up even further. If it was on TV, it's predisposed in a brand's eyes or an agency's eyes as having been good. It was good. It was on TV. It was in prime time, or it was on, you know, Travel Channel or Discovery. It's good. So if it's online now, it's still premium, to use your word. But I'm not exactly sure that we have spent enough time. We have to figure out distribution, but I don't think we spend enough time addressing what is good for a brand in any given circumstance. You know, some of the stuff that Break produces, you know, one advertiser may look at it and say, "Oh my God, nobody would ever advertise in that." But then the next advertiser would come along and say, "Oh my God, that's perfect for me for this campaign right now." And it's I think it's a combination of, I think, you know, production value may be a small part of it,
right.
But I think the social networks that are attached to the talent, to your point, Avi, from earlier, will aid in distribution. It's also going to aid in the effectiveness of carrying a brand message straight through to the consumer. Yeah. You know, other things like how consistently do you produce it? You know, all the things that YouTube factors into its search algorithm. Are you consistent? Have you been there for a long time? Do you do it every week? You know, do you have a large body of content? Do you have a lot of subscribers? You know, those are really important measures of quality that go beyond what we've been thinking about historically.
And you know, the thing that makes is attractive to so many independent producers is the freedom they have, and what they've missed is the executive side. There are no executives, and when you have no executives, you have no business model. You know, you're just flying out there. And what I found is that if you don't have a business model and you have a product that can be monetized, people will create a business model for you that is not necessarily beneficial for you, and not the best. And so I think a challenge that the brands face, it's like they could take advantage of creators, but creators don't know enough. But at the same time, I don't think the brands are approaching it, understanding that they're dealing with creatives that most of them have zero business sense, or if it's possible, negative business sense. And
Damn, you're rough. Don't tell that to Al Thompson over there. He's an executive.
I want to say one thing. I think it's important to talk about quality for a second because, I think the concept of quality or brands aligning with quality content is very interesting because some of the most successful branded pieces of content out there are made for $3,000. Now, we're not all going to, be successful in our businesses by kind of piggybacking on that, but I do think that it's important to understand content strategy, which is often lacking because I think you're right. We have stolen, in some respects, the TV model. And I don't believe, in my heart of hearts, and I'll fight it vehemently, I don't believe that that's the right model that works online. Okay? And if we all adapt to that model, we're gonna fail. I think, and you'll respect this because you're a content strategist. The idea of developing the right content strategy on top of the content, right, is the most important thing. Identifying and knowing exactly where the content's going to be seen, by whom and how, through what influencer, what channels. It's like your TV producers or video producers, everything's in pre-production. The better off you are in pre-production, the better off your ultimate project's going to end up. And that pre-production part, that content strategy part, is the ball game. Because I can tell you that if I release a piece of content across 30 blogs, that I may have to pay a little bit. I can tell you exactly how many views I'm going to get, and I will take the responsibility.
If you can, I'll buy them off you.
Okay. I'll buy them off. But and that comes back to the idea. That comes back to the idea of packaging. So I can tell you through the right distribution partners up front and the right influencer packaging up front. I will buy you dinner if you can deliver me more than 50,000 views on a real campaign on an influencer network, guaranteed. I've delivered upwards of 10 million views across.
Yeah, but you can't do that in a fashion that you can actually guarantee those views to an advertiser.
Absolutely. I do it every day. I do it every day, and I take the guarantee. So the IO comes through our distribution group, and we leverage our partnerships to do it, and we may need to pay for some seeding, but at the end of the day, I will take the responsibility of delivering those views, and the margin that's in there is monstrous. Okay?
I would second
exactly
that.
Right.
Yeah, I would second that, and I think that, again, we all have different strengths and kind of approaches to this problem, and I'm not saying it's an easy or that it works for every audience, but I definitely think that, again, one of the strengths of having a tie-in between a very strong social media practice, which is based on strategic approaches and methodologies, and what you might call packages, we call solutions, but really looking at the process by which you're identifying audience and pulling together a plan and cutting deals and maybe creating your own communities or having your own communities. all of that has to go into the video production and distribution process today, and I think that it is very different from television. I think there are some aspects to it that we're hoping will model television in terms of making it easy for the brand to be spending. And Paul, I think where you started this conversation was, what's it going to take, to kind of get to that next level, and what are the challenges that we have in terms of working with brands? And I think it's too complicated. From their standpoint, all the things that we're talking about here are on an execution level and are really about our own businesses and how we go about solving that problem of achieving a minimum view threshold so that it does make monetary sense for them to put you in their plan.
Right.
And then at the same time, incorporating their brands in a tastefully integrated way, or as a brought to you by, or, or. There's too many ors right now, as I see. I think that, you have a massive decision-making tree that you're taking the client through, and they just want to get their brand out there and sell soap, right? So I think that, for those of us who are trying to streamline that process and really make it efficient for brands to come to you, say, look, here are my KPIs, here are my objectives, what can you do for me? I think the answer has to be a simpler one. And that's the goal, I
Right.
think, for 2012 for all of us.
Okay.
Look, we've
But-
made monumental mistakes in the past, going out and creating content that we thought was going to work on behalf of a brand because that's what we creatively thought was going to work. And you go out there and you go, wow, this content, like you said, the content rocks. It's some of the best stuff we've ever produced. And you go out there and you go, I got 10 views. Like, what is going on here? It doesn't make sense. So now, we don't make content or align with content that we know isn't going to deliver a certain metric before we ever get in the room. Meaning, before we even start briefing, before we even get into the creative process, we go, who are we trying to talk to? What are we trying to get out of it? Who are the right partners? And then we get the partners in the room and we package it. So before we ever put an ounce of creative energy into the content, I can tell you exactly how many views I'm going to get out of the gate. And if the content's good, it'll go from there.
So can I rephrase it for you? You're saying you can only produce the hits? Is that what you're saying?
50,000 views is not a hit. Okay.
No,
I can guarantee a baseline.
but what you're saying is, if I understand it correctly, is you're saying that you will, if you produce a piece of content, it will be successful. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
Give him
if
the
I
mic,
produce,
give him the mic.
yeah, I'm saying if I produce a piece of content, I will know, and I guarantee our brands a baseline minimum of views. Okay, that's part of that's part of the budgeting of the content. So you give me X amount of dollars, we're going to make some content. As part of that, you got to let us make some decisions. And the more the brand starts to influence the content, the less the views come in. Because the more I got to talk about the soap, the less views come in. And so there's a give and take there. And as part of the process, we go, okay, you're going to pay X amount of dollars for this content. Off the bat, you're going to get 50,000 views. 50,000 views is a drop in the bucket. It's nothing.
But how do you know? What if I'm a antivirus medication? I'm psyched with 50,000 views.
Yes.
I mean, they are people that have
Absolutely.
the
And
disorder
that's why
that
we
I
can
want to read.
read.
So what you're doing is you're just laying out just a blanket of this is what's great, this sucks, this, And the thing that we hear when you talk about on the front lines, the thing that we hear from brands all the time is my agency is great at a 30-second TV spot and they suck at digital video.
Yeah.
And they need that help and guidance from us. But the thing is like Mike just said, we're in the weeds. This is what it gets to, this discussion. And look at our level that we're here, and we're going back and forth about 50,000 views, and I can pay for it. No, you can't. Yes, you can. Imagine what the brand's saying. The brand's saying, just move it to TV. Just
Right.
give it to ESPN,
That's totally right.
and I'm done,
Completely.
and I don't want to deal with it. And that is what's happening in the space. There's no standardization. I mean, let's get back up here.
Right,
No
but get- I think
a big
standardization.
part of the problem is
everybody's
a word that
presenting.
you just
One
used.
second.
Sorry.
Everybody's presenting the same thing. We're all talking the same thing, and there's nothing out there that gives the client the comfort of knowing that ESPN is here and great value, and digital video is here and great value. That's not there yet. It's vague and hazy, and they can't get
All
there.
right, Robbie, you go next, and then I have something on this.
I just want one quick thing. I think there's a word that you used that I would caution. You can produce the hits. I'm not in the business of producing hits. I'm in the business of delivering messages. Okay, and so if I get a hit out of it, if I get an Avion Baby out of it, or a Mustafa, awesome. That's gravy, man. But if I can go to a brand and go, give me this amount of money, I'll give you this amount of views. I can sell that all day long. And the content that I create has to meet a certain criteria or level of quality and a baseline. And it's not about hits. It's about singles and doubles in our business because it's about delivering and selling soap.
The thing, though, that Mustafa video, Old Spice sales were down year over year.
That's what I'm
Nobody
saying.
talks about that. Everybody
Yeah,
talks about the videos were unbelievable, campaign of the year, online video, the awards, the whole thing. Sales were down. You talk about
Totally.
brands needing to sell. So did that work? No. How many views did it get? Millions, tens of millions? So
I'll take the blender guy.
So to bring
Chris, let's go to Chris.
To bring the conversation back up, I think one of the things that's at the end of the day, we can talk about distribution, we can talk about views, but until the consumer starts or continues en masse to move away from the television set and to online viewing as a habit, that's what's going to drive it. There's only so much we can do. If the audience isn't there en masse a la television reach,
Right.
it's gonna,
Well, I think
it is what it is.
The audience.
I think the audience is there and it's growing every month. I mean, it's
Yeah, but it's not in the same way as TV,
Not-
right?
not
We
the
can
same
run a
way.
spot on a show and get the millions of people in a half hour. That millions of people
but
might
we're-
take 4
we're
weeks.
also-
I would say that more and more, maybe sports events, yes. But who doesn't fast forward through a show? I wait, even if it's my favorite show, I wait 20 minutes in before I start hitting play. And I don't know anybody. People go, hey, did you see me? And I got an actor friend. Did you see me in the ad? No, I don't watch ads. And
yet-
so I think that brands, one thing that what I was hearing, on understanding, the digital value of digital video for brands and elevating their understanding, there really needs to be an education on the value of sponsorship and branding over ads. Because when you say a brand goes, oh, I'm just going to go to TV, then I don't think you're pitching the right message on what branded entertainment or sponsorship is. Because if there's no correlation to the value that you get from aligning yourself with another brand, a show's brand, what I talked about earlier, you can't get that with an advertisement. You can't do that. And so if that's the message, there is no other option.
I agree with that, and I would just say that I think there's 2 data points just in terms from a market research standpoint, and maybe other people have conflicting stats, but the Ericsson study that just came out actually showed that in terms of, and we have the whole graph and chart on our blog at Magnet Media, but the television viewership is actually, to your point, in terms of ad consumption, is actually on the decline, and the online viewership of web video and mobile, of course, is on a dramatic rise, and it's the highest. Well, it pales in comparison in terms
real
of.
money and real scale and real adoption. We're still digital dimes.
Agreed.
I think in terms of the ability to aggregate and curate audiences, that's one of the biggest challenges. And I think that in terms of our strategy and our solution to this problem, we have 2 options. One is to approach it from an influencer standpoint and really reach out to a number of small audiences that may be fragmented, but that you could consolidate and offer to a brand as a solution. The other is to work with traditional media partners or successful ad networks. And those are 2 things that we're doing in a very aggressive way in 2012, and their early success has been dramatic. And I would say that I do think that a lot of the frustrations and sort of challenges are behind us to a certain degree.
Mike,
I'd say there's one-
One second. We're going to open up to questions right after Mike's comments. So get ready. Mike, you're the lead into questions. Go.
It'll be a quick transition because I'm going to ask one too, but I'd say there's one other solution too, and that's just go where the audience is. We're in the weeds a little bit on a very, very hard problem that's not going to change just because more people are coming online. There are a lot of people that are consuming a good amount of online video so that the media value is not bad. And a lot of them are, most of you guys are content producers. How many of you have your own channel on YouTube? So of the people that have their own channel on YouTube, how many of you are content partners where there's ads running against your content? So that was about half and then half again. And so of you guys that actually can sell advertising or have ads on your show, on your channel, how many of you have ever taken advantage of being able to sell directly into your content, to sell media or sponsorship into your content? So I think that's 0. So I think that's an interesting, another way of looking at it, especially through the lens of creators, which is if you have audience, and I should ask, so of people that have their own channels on YouTube, does anybody have more than 50,000 subscribers to their channel? Well done, Christian. Paul. So I say 50,000 because on YouTube alone, or on YouTube, which is very important to think about, the 2,000th biggest producer or 2,000th biggest channel has 50,000 subscribers. Now that's still not a big TV number, but that's a number we keep kicking around. I think just because somewhere in our head it seems like a nice enough number to address discreetly if you're thinking about who they are and how you can influence them in a really meaningful way, and if they're a unique and a special audience that's really engaged with its producer that's got a lot of value. So I think going where the audience is another way of thinking about it. If there are big audiences on YouTube and in other places, start there and then work out as opposed to starting with the content and working it.
Okay. Let's give you guys a chance for a question. Brian Rada in the back. What's up, Brian?
How
Nice and loud. Actually, if you could come up. Yeah, let's get you on here because it's connected to the camera. And anyone else wants to have a question, just come on up.
Well, this is a great debate. I love you guys. Great conversation. My question is about sort of, you're right, if a company has, say, a $5 million spend, why would they spend $5,000? So if there's a content producer who's coming to you, are they thinking too low in terms of number? Or how do we train or teach content creators to come to people for a magic number? And I've heard that in other lines of business. It's like, if you want to deal with a person who has $50,000 to spend or $5 million, but if somebody only has $5,000 or $10,000, it's not worth your time. So how do you make it worth the people who are spending the money? How do you make it worth their time? And how do you pitch advertisers appropriately to make it, to you sound credible? Because I think a lot of content producers are on nickel and dime budgets, and they don't think, oh, I should ask for $100,000 or $500,000, which is really the range they probably should be asking for to create different types of content.
500,000 is the number to create content, you think?
To go to an advertiser with. Is it better to go with a $500,000 budget for what you're planning on doing, or a $5,000 budget?
Or 50. So would you take somebody seriously who says, I think I need maybe $100,000 to make this show, or are you going to be like, that isn't worth my time? But if they came to you and said, this show takes $1 million, then are you going to listen? Because you hear that in the movie business as well. Yep. People don't want to make a $5 million movie. They either want to make an $80 million movie, or they want to make, whatever.
I'll tell you from where I sit, because I'm having those conversations with the agencies and the brands. The first thing I say is, what is your budget overall, and what's the expectation level that you're getting? And that is where the starting point. I can sit in an office and say I can produce 10 episodes, and it's going to cost $1 million, and go out to 50 advertisers, and none of them have that money. So what does that get me? So what I want to do is understand from them what the goal is and what the campaign is about. We have a studio in LA. I can do 10 episodes shooting on the beach in Venice for $5,000, and it'll look great. If you want me to fly a crew to Cabo end, can't do it for $5,000.
There's more to it than just production, right?
Yeah.
What you're really talking about
I
is...
want to talk about that as well. I would just jump in really quick and say that for content producers, when you're going to make something, think about it with a brand in mind. Don't just go crazy and produce something and try and attach a brand. It'll never happen in a million years. The second thing I would say is, when you're thinking about producing and budgets around that, you can't think about, to your point earlier, you can't think about producing something without distributing it. No advertiser is going to talk to you unless you say, here's what I'm going to produce, and these are the views I'm going to get against it. And to Megan's point, it's starting to build paid media into these. So the two go hand in hand, unfortunately, within this web space. You can't talk production without distribution.
I actually think it's even broader than that. Again, I think you're spot on, because here's the fact of the matter. As content producers, what has happened is, because money has dried up in some respects in the kind of fragmented entertainment world, content producers have gone, let me go to the brands because they have all the money. Brands are not in the business of making content, okay? They're not your sugar daddy to become the new studio. But what they are is they're trying to sell the damn soap, which I keep saying. And so when you talk about packaging it all together, okay, there's also more than just video views, which we spent a lot of time talking today. There's sentiment, okay, there's share of voice. There are things that come out of content, because if I deliver 1 million video views of a piece of content, okay, but everybody that watches it tweets that it sucked, then I would argue that the 1 million video views created a backlash versus positive. So now, how do I take the content that I've created, distribute it out there, but also measure what's happening around it? How is it being shared? What are people saying about it? How is it increasing the sentiment of the brand across the board, and how is it moving the needle for the brand? If you can tell that story to the brand, you'll get the bigger budgets, because the brand doesn't care. I hate to say it because it pains me, because I'm a content guy. The brands don't care about content. okay? And the sooner that we can align ourselves to understanding how to solve their problems, their objectives, which is exactly where you start, that's where you start putting the package together to go, okay, I'm going to solve that problem. And maybe it's not selling soap. Maybe it's about changing perception. Kimberly Clark introducing a new tampon, whatever it might be, trying to skew to a younger audience. They have issues that they're trying to solve, whether it's crisis management, reputation management, a new product launch. Those are business issues driven by executives. And until we develop the right content strategy to solve those problems, the content itself is irrelevant. Then you figure distribution and what the creative is and how to package it all. But at the end of the day...
I have another way of maybe answering that question, or an interesting anecdote at least. So everybody knows that YouTube just donated, gave away, built deals around $100 million and gave creators $100 million to produce stuff. A lot of high-end guys and people that are already big on their platform. An interesting play, we can talk about that for a long time, but what I thought was interesting, has anybody seen the sales deck that goes along with that?
Yeah, tomorrow morning, speaking.
Well, hopefully they share a little bit of the sales deck, because this is a really interesting, the page from TV that you might think about is, you can't buy a spot in SportsCenter without buying ESPN Deportes. And so, the YouTube strategy for this $100 million, at least there's lots of reasons they did it, but for getting back that $100 million is run of category. So think about it, the biggest video distribution platform in the world by a country mile has to package tons of, I'm not gonna call it crap, tons of other stuff in order to sell the gems. And so they've got these channels. The Comedy Channel now has 4 or 5 new programs with Ben Silverman producing them, and that's great, and I'm sure they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to get a lot of audience. The only way you can be there is if you buy $10 million run of category, and then you're one of 3 advertisers against that new concept.
And ultimately, I think where this is leading, and this is stepping back out of the weeds for a little bit, ultimately what we're talking about is building scalable solutions for advertisers. And the scalable ad units are right now, and there will be for a while, pre-rolls and buttons and overlays. And the branded stuff will take us there, but ultimately the advertisers are going to want to buy mass reach in a scalable fashion. That's what we're all going to, across a category or a demo.
But I would just say if those pre-rolls are served up against content that's been embraced in the editorial well instead of in the ad well, that's considered a higher premium value. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Carter, hold on one second.
I just want to say, I'm sorry.
Hold on 1 second. Any question, come up to the microphone, and then we'll get you right after Carter's comment.
I was just going to say, I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but on that Google, the money that they gave out, I had a conversation with some of the creators that are nominated for awards, and basically the amount of money for the amount of hours that they're requiring so that they can serve those ads. If people actually paid industry standard rates to produce any of the shows nominated in the scripted narrative categories, none of them could be made for what YouTube is giving the money. So they're giving $100 million out, but it's for lower quality, mass-produced, non-scripted narrative content.
DBG is producing a channel for YouTube called Spaces. It's in the home and design category. It's been sponsored. And we're making a good margin on that business.
Are all the deals the same? Because all I know is the people that I talked to, and they gave me their numbers.
The amounts are different.
That they had
the amounts are different per producer.
Okay, so what they're giving most of the producers then is not what they're giving you.
Yeah,
Well, I've heard to the Kinger. Yeah, I've heard to more to Chris's point, but I think you need to be very smart by the way you use the money. It's not a panacea to all your costs. Yeah, let's take a question.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I'm a content producer. I started with a web series for BET, and now I've moved into television with TV One. And in reference to segmentation, do you have minority strategies for your advertisers, or does that even exist?
I think the question is, do advertisers have minority-driven strategies? Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. We did a show called Latinos Are One sponsored by McDonald's. They have a huge initiative, Hispanic initiative. So we're doing and we're also doing something for Toyota, a web series right now that's focused towards the Hispanic market. It's a huge market, huge dollars, and I think it's incredibly important, all back to the nature of an empowered consumer and what they find useful and entertaining, utilitarian.
And Telemundo also might be someone else you want to talk to, because they just made one of their SVPs like a GM, which is in charge of social media. So I think they're doing a lot more online. And AOL Latina, yes, thank you.
There's tons of opportunities.
I actually think it's easier because you're able to. Sorry. I actually think it's a huge opportunity because the expectation of scale isn't as high. And there's a reality of what you can and cannot accomplish and a certain amount of partners that you can leverage. And I think brands and advertisers are always looking for unique and compelling ways to engage minority audiences. Absolutely.
Okay. Next question.
Judith Khan, you addressed the fact that you keep using and referring to the traditional entertainment model at some level, the TV model. And I'm wondering if there are instances, for example, I mean, I come from the entertainment and advertising world background and heavily in the movie business, and I am shaping something for a web launch, and I would like a corporate partner that is ongoing, someone who can commit $250,000, $500,000 and would get it off the ground in a very handsome way, and it would have entertainment, infotainment value. It has huge cultural value, and it speaks to what you were talking to. It has residual value in an ongoing way, something that somebody or a company would want to be identified with, in the same way that so many brands oftentimes in the past have launched their own magazines. A BMW magazine, it's presumably for a broad scale market that's a luxury market. So are there instances of brands that you're working with that are doing that are underwriting projects?
If I can sum up all of the back and forth that we had up here that might have been foreign to some folks here, that's it in a nutshell. The answer is, would they align with the content because it's great content? Sure. But their first question when you start talking about handsomely launching it for $250,000 is, how many people are going to see it? And that is the distillation of everything we've been talking about. Is content's great, but if nobody sees it, it's not great for the brand.
What do they see? Using the term distribution, and I come coming from marketing, and they're like two sides of the same coin. But distribution is, is it going to get out there? Marketing is, what is the campaign?
Well,
because this other entity itself becomes...
They're actually not two sides of the same coin, marketing and distribution. It's the way we distribute online is very different than the way you would market it. Market is pushing out your message.
No, of course.
Distribution is going to be really, truly getting it to where your audience lives.
Yes, but also marketing is creating, the want to buy, the want to see.
Sure, but with you could market all you want, and without the right distribution, you're a goner.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to have the both of them, but if you have distribution, but you still don't have the means to announce that it's there and this is where to go, at what time...
Yeah, but it's not about where to go. You're still thinking about the where to go. It's not about where to go. If it's tweeted out by someone you follow on Twitter, you don't have to go. It's there for you. If it's in your Facebook world, it's there for you versus you having to go to it. So that's a good question. Can you distribute but not market and still be successful?
Absolutely. It's online. There's no line between the two. It's let's take the influencer example. If you partner with Britney Spears, I don't know whether she's literate enough for Twitter, but you partner with Britney Spears. She has 34 million followers, and if she tweets out a link to your video, is that marketing or distribution? It is, in a way, it is marketing that results in distribution. But if you could look at...
But I
think marketing tells a story. Marketing has to tell a story.
Marketing's going to tell a story.
Distribution is about getting eyeballs and getting people to do things.
And people view the marketing piece of it as like hopeful, but not guaranteed. Whereas distribution, that's a commitment. And I think when people are talking about the insertion order, the $250,000 has to come attached to a commitment to a certain number of views.
Right.
And if that is not fulfilled, then they're not going to pay you the full amount. It's not just because you produced it. So I think that's the disconnect between a television production model and an online production model.
So you're talking about distribution as guaranteeing a certain number of views,
Yes.
okay? Regardless of the fact that it's always up. It's always there. There's not a fixed time. It's a website.
And within a time frame. Most campaigns have a certain timeline.
Need to happen in a...
So you have
dates.
a window where you need to deliver X million or X thousand views.
You're heading down the same path that we hear all the time. And I really don't mean to discourage you, but your whole focus on $250 or $500 grand to get this awesome thing, and at some point, someone is going to look at you and say, how many people saw it? And it's going to be 14.
Well, at a new point, there's no guarantee, but there's a, you make assumptions based on certain other things that are similar. That's how any business starts up, on research. And if you say, we assume that we're going to get X amount of eyeballs within this window of time, a month, 30 days, 60 days, and this is the character. It's not an entertainment product. It's not a show, okay? It's an infotainment, for want of something better, that has entertainment qualities, but also has service, I don't mean to...
If you want to see whether it has legs, try to launch an episode on it on YouTube. Try to do your own marketing.
All right, good luck with it.
Thank you.
Next question. We'll just do these two, and then we're going to be out of time.
Hi guys, thank you first of all for doing this, and thank you Paul for
Thank you.
It's awesome. My name's Akil Jansky. I'm a creator. I've got a show called The Further Adventures of Cupid and Eros, which we're fortunate enough to actually be up for an award tomorrow, and some other stuff. And one of the things, we had these sort of lofty goals when we started. We sort of similarly, actually, to the last person, sort of thought we're going to create this great piece of content, put it out there, and someone's going to flock to support us, right? And beyond the fact that that just didn't happen, the bigger thing that we found is at the end of the day, even with our 4,000 views or whatever, I'm still someone that brands and agencies don't know. And it's hard, really hard, even to just get them to go to my YouTube page. You asked about trying to do direct sponsor stuff, and it's not for lack of trying, it's just we haven't been able to get in the door. My question is, you guys, in some ways, are becoming the new gatekeepers. So personally, I'm less interested about what I have to do to directly get Match.com to take my phone call. I'm a lot more interested in what I would need to do to get in the room with you guys and see how I can best help those of you that are talking to brands, do that. So I'm curious about.
It's a good thing Paul's throwing a cocktail hour later. You'll be in the same room with us.
So, networking obviously is part of that, but.
Yeah, seriously. I mean.
I've got a season 1 DVD I can give you. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. A match is great.
You just did it.
I'm also interested though in some of your metrics as opposed to the brand's metrics, if that makes sense.
We're actually, so this quarter, we're rolling out Magnet Originals, which is essentially what you're talking about, which will have a content creator network in addition to hooking them up with our partners on the distribution side. So we have full-time staff, producers, editors, animators, but we also are really now expanding quite rapidly. And so one of the things that we're doing in New York, and I don't know where you're based, but we're starting there, is to have on a regular basis networking events where we have sort of speed date interviews with some of our staff that deals with our brands, and so that we can really kind of help channel more efficiently the content creator network, which is just amazing to me. And coming from the independent film world, I don't think there's anything similar to what happened in the 80s around Sundance to what's going on right now online. I think that a lot of different entities are trying to harness the power of all the great voices that are out there, but it's really challenging. And I think probably all of us can identify with the fact that we get 100 resumes or pilots that are emailed to us, Vimeo and YouTube links a week, and that's not really we're not able to do justice to the amount of great content that's being created. And so we're putting together this series of events, starting out in New York and then moving out to the West Coast later in the year. So please give me your card as well.
It's a tough road, Javi. There's, as Megan was saying, there's a lot of people pitching ideas, so it's tough.
Content sadly has been commoditized. Okay, and so. Again, having come out of kind of the entertainment world where the idea was everything, and in the advertising world where the big idea is everything, it's actually sadly not anymore, which means you have to bring other things to the table. So you can have a great idea, and the easiest way to say that, if you have a great idea, I'll hire you as a creative director. Does that mean you get to own the content? No. But at the end of the day, if you come to me and say, I got a great idea, and oh, by the way, I got this partner and that partner and this publisher and whatever, and we got something unique put together, then that's something you listen to. It's unfortunate because of the proliferation of content and how much there is out there. It's not about the idea anymore, unfortunately. Great ideas are key, but there are so many great ideas out there. And some of the best work we've ever produced and the best ideas that we have ever come out of the gate at Big Fuel are our biggest failures. And some of our greatest successes, I looked at it and said, I can't believe this worked. But shit, it worked. Why? Because the dots were aligned, right? And it was packaged properly. I keep using that term, packaging, and I think that is the key to success in online content, is putting the right package together.
Well, packaging is basically where the film world went. Anyway,
Totally.
Right? So are we just catching up online to that idea?
I think so, but I think it's a different package.
Yeah, it's definitely a different
It's
package.
a different package. It's not about
We have
the
more
star
control
director.
over it.
Right. The package used to be, and I started in the mailroom at ICM. Okay, so coming out of the agent world, like, packaging was everything. Get the right director with the right writer and the right this, and that's a package that I can sell the crap out of, right? That people will buy because people buy talent, right? Or studios buy talent. The package today is different. The package today is around success metrics, distribution metrics, engagement metrics, influence, targeting, conversation value, things that as content creators, I never even understood, heard about, or cared about. Okay, and to some degree, still don't care about, but I have to pay attention to, because those are the things that the brands pay attention to. And at the end of the day, as an agency, our job is to get our clients promoted and get and not fired, right? Ultimately, and by doing that, it's about delivering on success metrics and KPIs.
Okay, it's our last question. We want to make sure we answer it as best as we can, so let's go. Last one.
I'm glad you brought up the studios. My question is, as content creators, how do you guys work with brands whose products are content, like movies and TV shows?
That's the best kind of client I have.
So you're saying that clients would be entertainment clients? Okay, so we did an engagement campaign last year for ABC around their show Wipeout, and essentially what we did was we designed a microsite that was socially enabled, and then the viewer can actually come and put your face through a Facebook photo onto the person who's being wiped out. So it's very short and fun, but it's a very silly show. But it was the personalization aspect was incredibly powerful, and they had been concerned about the launch of that next series because the show had been around a couple of years, and it actually had the highest ratings towards success metrics. So on television. So I think that a lot of the entertainment clients, while challenging because so many of the content creators know their properties and pitch them regularly, they're open to doing some of the more creative things. We also work really with at DreamWorks and NBC, and I'd be happy to kind of share some more case studies if you want to hear about the types of things that we're doing for them.
All right, so we touched on a lot of things. We got very deep. At the end of the day, somebody who is creating their own content, what is it that they need to focus on? What is going to help them get to a point where they can monetize their content? A whole nother discussion is building a sustainable business model around video that's advertising alone, and that's impossible to do. You need licensing as well, but let's focus on the advertising side. What do they need to, what's that one takeaway that
Partners.
you think they need to have? Everyone can have their own if you like. From a creator perspective. So we know the advertisers, we understand what's going on. We are in the ecosystem, we are in the weeds. What do we wish the creators knew before they came to us?
Build your own loyal audience, because that's what we need
Build
the
your own
most.
audience, 100%.
All right, so we got to build your own audience. Andrew.
I would say align with publishers, align with the people that are thriving and needing that, or not thriving, that are thirsty for that content. That's, as Break.com or Made Man, we want content. If you have a great idea for Made Man, come to us. We definitely want it because we have advertisers on the other side looking for it. You'll never get into Match.com ever. You guys will never do it. It'll never happen because there's 5 million of you literally that wake up and say, this show is perfect for Match.com, I'm going to call them. It's just impossible. So align yourself with the publishers and the people that own the content, the platform, and that's where you'll get traction.
I would say think of your own content as its own brand itself, and think of it as a business, and have your own planning and strategy on it, so that when you are talking with people who are going to be ultimately making a business decision, you can have a conversation with them that makes sense and show them why they should do business with you.
I would say, building on the grow your own audience, I would say pick a specific audience and stick to it. Okay, become an expert on something. Okay, pick a demographic, whatever it might be, right, and continue to make content about that subject matter. and volume, lots of it. Make sure you build your social profiles out, get that content to get your channels or your independent individual network to build its own audience base. And the more niche that you can be, the more you'll have success within that particular influence group.
And I'll second your point. And I'll just add to this, and testing and experimentation, and try different things, stay consistent to what you're doing, but try different things, launch them on YouTube, it's free, and have some fun with it.
And engage your audience too. Don't just.
Avi, you don't get a second one, bro.
I would say the other point is just in terms of whether you build your own audience or find an existing partner that has that audience. Those are two really valid strategies. But just the fact that you're here and understanding that audience is what brands are buying instead of content that they're buying. I mean, that puts you way ahead of the general marketplace of content creators. And one other sort of free and available resource that we really recommend everyone use, whether or not you're working with YouTube, is to look at the YouTube playbook, which is just youtube.com/playbook. It's a 70-slide deck. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you first download it, but it is so helpful in terms of looking at the number of things that individuals can do that don't have a lot of resources, that are guerrilla in nature in terms of the activities, but it's the factors that really increase your viewership when you're publishing to YouTube. And the last thing, sorry, I know I'm speaking too long, is the pilot aspect, which I think is undervalued. And I think that for those who have ideas, producing a pilot and showing how great that idea is, and then bringing it to a company like any of ours, I think that's a lot. You're now filtered at a different level because we know you can execute.
All right, Chris Young, bring us home. Bring us home, Chris.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I think what's resonating in my opinion, these are all good ideas. Definitely think about building your audience, and definitely think about leveraging companies just like ours. Whether it's Break, whether it's DBG, Magnet, to the notion of creating a pilot or whatnot. We get 10 branded entertainment RFPs a week. We've got a database, about 300 ideas. We're creating new ones. We have a writers' roundtable that meets at 2 o'clock every day. If you've got something, when you're thinking about ideating, and that's a word that my partner hates. He likes utilitainment though. But when you're ideating, web series and different things, think about it in terms of a brand, a demographic. Who are advertisers? Who do they want to advertise to? 18 to 24-year-old males, et cetera, et cetera. Think about that when you're designing a show. Don't design something that is creatively and artistically the coolest thing, but is, toxic or, not interesting to brands. Because that's cool, but if your goal is to monetize something, you need to think about it, from a business perspective, what's going to work, and there is a balance. And then come and talk to us. I'm all for it, because we've got so much demand. We are swamped, and if they're good ideas and we can come up with a good deal, for you guys, and then go through and sell it, I'm all for it.
Please join me in thanking our panel. This has been awesome. Thank you for being part of the IWTV community. Thank you for helping us honor, celebrate, and educate the industry. You guys rock. Thank you.